The champagne flutes were still lined up like crystal soldiers on the 10-foot marble island. 40 chairs gleamed around the imperial dining table beneath chandeliers worth more than my apartment. I had folded every napkin, lit every candle, polished every fork. "Dinner is in exactly 30 minutes, chef girl," Haley sneered, brushing past me in her custom silk gown. "Don't mess this up. My reputation is on the line tonight." I smiled and nodded. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that while she and her 40 elite guests clinked empty glasses in confusion, I would be 30,000 feet in the air, gone, out of their world, and for the first time in my life, into my own. My name is Alyssa Brooks. I'm 39 years old, and until 3 months ago, I was the invisible woman behind countless, spectacular events for California's elite. The one who made miracles happen in kitchens while they took the credit. The one who stayed up all night perfecting sauces while they slept on Egyptian cotton. The one who smiled and said, "Of course," when what I really wanted to say was, "Go to hell." But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it began. The moment I walked through the imposing mahogany doors of the Astor Estate in Carmel by the Sea. The moment I made the mistake of believing that talent and hard work would be enough to earn respect. "You come highly recommended," Harrison Astor said without looking up from his phone. His silver hair caught the morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Pacific. "We're hosting 40 of California's most influential people. My daughter is handling the arrangements." The way he said daughter contained a whisper of apology. I should have paid attention to that. "I understand, Mr. Astor. I've prepared a suggested menu based on the seasonal—" "Daddy, is this her?" A voice like cold silk interrupted me. Haley Astor glided into the room, designer heels clicking against marble floors. 28, perfectly maintained, and wearing the expression of someone perpetually disappointed. "You don't look like the chefs on Instagram." I extended my hand. "Alyssa Brooks. I specialize in—" She glanced at my hand as if I'd offered her a dead fish. "We're doing a sensory dining experience. Something memorable. Something that will make a statement." She finally looked me in the eyes. "Can you handle that, chef girl?" Chef girl, not Chef Brooks, not Ms. Brooks, not even Alyssa. Chef girl, like I was 16 and this was my first job at a fast food restaurant. "Of course," I said, swallowing my dignity. "I can prepare whatever you'd like." I needed this job. 6 months of declining catering gigs had drained my savings. Rent was due in 2 weeks. My mother's medication wasn't covered by insurance. And this ridiculous display of wealth and the 5-figure payment that came with it was my lifeline. So I smiled. Haley flipped through my portfolio without reading a word. "I'm thinking gold leaf, caviar, truffles, the works, nothing basic." She looked up suddenly. "You've worked with celebrities before, right?" "Yes, I've catered for several high-profile—" "Good. Then you know how to be invisible." She snapped the portfolio shut. "The staff quarters are in the East Wing. Marianne will show you where to put your things. We start planning tomorrow at 7 a.m. sharp." Harrison Astor had remained silent during this entire exchange, but as I turned to leave, I caught him looking at me with an odd expression, something between recognition and guilt. "Have we met before, Ms. Brooks?" he asked suddenly. "I don't believe so, sir. You remind me of someone I knew a long time ago, a consultant who—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "Never mind. Welcome to Astor Estate." The staff quarters turned out to be nicer than my apartment. A cruel irony that wasn't lost on me. Marianne Ellis, the estate's housekeeper for 20 years, showed me to my room with the efficiency of someone who had done this countless times. "How long have you been doing this kind of work?" she asked as I unpacked my knives. "Professionally, about 15 years, but I've been cooking since I was 16. I didn't tell her that I started because my mother got sick and someone had to feed the family. I didn't mention the community college classes I took at night while working 2 jobs. I didn't tell her about the loans I was still paying off. She folded her arms across her chest. "Just a word of advice, honey. These people aren't like us. They see us as extensions of the furniture. Useful until we're not." I laughed softly. "I've worked for difficult clients before. Not like Haley." Marianne's face darkened. "That girl was born with everything and still thinks the world owes her more. Just watch yourself." I should have listened more carefully. The next morning, I presented 3 potential menu options to Haley. She rejected them all without explanation. I created 3 more. She rejected those too. "What exactly are you looking for?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice level. "Something special." She waved her hand dismissively. Something that says Haley Astor when people taste it. What does that even mean? I wanted to ask. But instead, I nodded. Perhaps if you could tell me about your personal taste preferences. I don't have time for this, she interrupted. Just figure it out. That's why we're paying you, isn't it? To figure it out? For the next 3 days, I created and recreated menus. I sourced ingredients from across the state. I prepared sample dishes that went untasted. All while Haley barked orders, changed her mind hourly, and referred to me exclusively as Chef Girl. On the 4th day, I finally created something she approved, a 7-course tasting menu featuring local ingredients elevated with luxury touches. Gold-flecked honey drizzled over fresh burrata, black truffle shavings on handmade pasta. Wagyu beef with a red wine reduction so complex it took 12 hours to prepare. This is acceptable, she said, barely glancing at the detailed proposal. Make sure everything is perfect. For a moment, I felt victorious. Then she added, oh, and we need to change the dessert. I want something with lavender. The florist is using lavender, so the dessert should match. I had spent 2 days perfecting the chocolate soufflé with salted caramel. Of course, I said, I'll create something with lavender. That night, as I worked late reconfiguring the dessert, Marianne brought me a cup of tea. You're still at it? She asked, eyeing the mess of ingredients spread across the counter. Haley wants lavender in the dessert now, I explained. So I'm testing a lavender panna cotta with honey poached pears. Marianne shook her head. She'll change her mind again tomorrow. She was right. The next morning, Haley breezed into the kitchen while I was prepping. I've been thinking, she said, picking at a bowl of berries I'd just washed. Lavender is so basic. Everyone does lavender. Let's do rose instead. I closed my eyes briefly. Rose. For 40 people. By tomorrow night. Is that a problem, Chef Girl? Her voice sharpened. I thought you were supposed to be the best. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I recognized. Beneath the designer clothes and practiced sneer was a terrified little girl desperate to prove herself. I knew that feeling. I'd spent my whole life trying to prove myself worthy. The difference was I had actually worked for it. No problem at all, I said quietly. Rose it is. The estate kitchen was a marvel of design and function. Viking ranges, custom refrigeration, countertops of pristine Italian marble. At 2 a.m., with only the soft glow of under-cabinet lighting, it felt like a sanctuary. This was when I did my best work. When the world slept and I could lose myself in the rhythm of chopping, stirring, tasting. When I could forget, for a few precious hours, that I was just a servant in someone else's palace. I was piping delicate rose cream into 40 individual dessert cups when the kitchen door swung open. You're still up. Good. Haley stood in the doorway, wrapped in a silk robe, her face freshly washed and eyes slightly unfocused. She'd been drinking. I just had the most amazing idea. My hands stilled. For the menu? For the entrance. I want the guests to have something the moment they walk in, before they even sit down. She waved her hands excitedly. An amuse-bouche. Something, I don't know, surprising. I set down my piping bag. The menu is finalized, Haley. We've ordered all the ingredients. The timing is calculated down to the minute. Adding another course now would... Did I ask for your opinion? Her voice hardened. I just decided. I want a vegan amuse-bouche for everyone, organic only, and you'll need to prep it by sunrise. I stared at her, suddenly aware of every aching muscle in my body, every hour of sleep lost over the past week. The event is tomorrow evening. I've been working 20-hour days to meet your specifications. Adding something new at this point would compromise the quality of... Compromise? She laughed, the sound brittle in the quiet kitchen. You know what's compromising? Paying someone a fortune to do their job and getting pushback. If you can't handle it, Chef Girl, I'm sure I can find someone who can. In that moment, looking into her eyes, cold, entitled, utterly devoid of empathy, I realized she didn't see me as human. I was a tool, a means to an end, something to be used and discarded. I'll take care of it, I said softly. She smiled, victorious. I knew you would. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. The serving staff called and canceled. Some virus going around or whatever. So you'll need to handle service too. My head snapped up. Service? For 40 people? That's not possible for one person. Haley, that wasn't part of our agreement. This is what you're paid for, right? She raised an eyebrow. To make things happen? To make me look good? She gestured vaguely around the kitchen. Figure it out. The door swung shut behind her, and I stood in the silence, my carefully constructed world crumbling around me. I had spent my life saying yes. Yes to cooking for my family when I was still a child myself. Yes to working double shifts to pay for culinary classes. Yes to clients who wanted the impossible on impossible timelines. Yes, because saying no meant failure. Yes, because I believed that if I just worked hard enough, long enough, someday I would be valued. But in that moment, I saw the truth with perfect clarity. There would always be another demand, another change, another humiliation. They would take and take until there was nothing left to give. I walked to the window. The moon hung low over the Pacific, casting a silver path across the water. Somewhere out there was another life, a life where I wasn't invisible. You okay, honey? Marianne's voice startled me. She stood in the doorway, concern etched on her face. Haley wants a vegan amuse-bouche by morning, I said, my voice hollow. And apparently I'm serving 40 people solo tomorrow night. Marianne sighed deeply. Sweetheart, people like them will take everything you give and ask for more. That's how they stay rich. They feed off people like us. I know, and I did know. I had always known. Somewhere deep down. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. So, what are you going to do? She asked. I turned. Back to the window. To that silver path across the water. A path leading away from here. Away from this life. What I've always done, I replied. My job. Marianne squeezed my shoulder and left me alone with my thoughts. I returned to my piping, each movement precise, mechanical. But inside, something had shifted. A quiet rage was building, not hot and explosive, but cold and clarifying, like the moment frost crystallizes on glass. By morning, I had created the vegan amuse-bouche, delicate cucumber cups filled with avocado mousse and topped with micro-herbs from the estate garden. I had finished the rose desserts. I had prepped every component for every course. Everything was labeled, organized, ready. Harrison Astor found me in the herb garden at dawn, collecting the last of the ingredients. You've been working all night, he observed, not a question but a statement. He looked oddly vulnerable in the early light, without his usual armor of expensive suits and calculated distance. The job requires it, I replied, not looking up from the basil I was cutting. My daughter can be demanding. He cleared his throat. I want you to know that your work is appreciated. I finally looked at him. Is it? Something flickered across his face. Discomfort, perhaps, or recognition. You remind me so much of her, he said quietly. Who? Elizabeth Brooks. He said the name like it held weight, meaning, she consulted for my company 20 years ago when I was on the verge of bankruptcy. Brilliant woman. Saved my entire operation with a restructuring plan that no one else had the courage to implement. My hands stilled. Elizabeth Brooks. My mother. That was my mother, I said. His eyes widened. Your mother? I had no idea. She never mentioned a daughter. She was private about her personal life. I returned to cutting herbs, my movements deliberate. She taught me everything I know about working hard and keeping my word. She was extraordinary, he said, his voice soft with memory. I've often wondered what happened to her. Cancer, I said simply. For the past 10 years. That's where most of my earnings go. Medical bills insurance won't cover. He was silent for a long moment. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Why would you? I gathered my herbs and stood. We're just the invisible people who make your lives possible. I walked past him, back toward the kitchen, leaving him standing alone in the garden. As I reached the door, he called after me. Alyssa, if there's anything you need... I turned back. There is one thing, Mr. Astor. Could you ask Haley to treat the staff with basic human dignity? That would be a start. I didn't wait for his response. The day of the dinner arrived with the kind of perfect weather that money seems to attract. 72 degrees, cloudless sky, gentle breeze carrying the scent of the ocean. I watched from the kitchen window as workers transformed the already immaculate garden into a fairy tale setting. Crystal chandeliers hung from oak branches. White roses climbed custom-built trellises. A string quartet set up near a fountain that now flowed with water dyed the faintest shade of blue. All this for a single evening. All this to impress people who would forget it by next week. I had slept exactly 90 minutes, curled uncomfortably on a chair in the pantry. My back ached. My fingers were raw from knife work. But the kitchen was immaculate. Every component prepped and stored at the perfect temperature, labeled with precise instructions. I had even written out a minute-by-minute schedule for service. A service I was now expected to execute alone. "Well, don't you look like hell?" Marianne said, entering with a cup of coffee. "Thank you," I said, accepting the mug gratefully. "Always the charmer." She smiled, but her eyes were serious. "You can't do this by yourself tonight, Alyssa. It's not physically possible. One person cannot cook and serve a 7-course meal to 40 people. "I know." I sipped the coffee. It was perfect. Strong and black. Just how I needed it. "I'm going to talk to Harrison again. Surely he can hire last-minute staff. Good luck with that." Marianne snorted. "He hasn't contradicted that girl since she was 16. Not after her mother left. That explained some things. Still, he's a reasonable man. He'll see that this is impossible." 3 hours. Later, I stood in Harrison's study, watching him shake his head. "I understand your concern, but it's too late to find qualified servers now," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Haley assures me you can handle it. She says many modern chefs prefer to plate and serve their own creations." "For intimate dinners of 6 or 8 people, perhaps," I replied, struggling to keep my voice level. "Not for 40 guests across 7 courses. That's 280 plates, Mr. Astor. It's physically impossible for one person." He sighed, finally looking at me. "What do you suggest?" "Call a staffing agency. Pay whatever premium necessary for last-minute service. Or simplify the menu to a plated first course and elegant buffet for the main." "Absolutely not." Haley's voice cut through the room like ice. She stood in the doorway, already dressed for the evening in a gown that probably cost more than my car. "We are not serving a buffet. This isn't a corporate retreat." "Haley," Harrison began, "Ms. Brooks has valid concerns about—" "This is what I wanted, Daddy. What we agreed on." Her voice took on the practiced whine of someone used to getting her way. "Everyone is coming to experience my vision. Chef, girl is just being difficult because she doesn't want to work a little harder." A little harder. As if I hadn't been working myself to exhaustion for a week. "I've fulfilled every other request," I said quietly. "Changed the menu repeatedly. Created new dishes overnight. But what you're asking now isn't just difficult. It's impossible." Haley's eyes narrowed. "If it's so impossible, maybe we should find someone else. Someone who doesn't make excuses." "The dinner is in 5 hours," I replied. "Then I guess you'd better figure it out." She smiled, cold and triumphant. "Unless you want to be known as the chef who walked out on Harrison Astor. I'm sure that would do wonders for your career." The threat hung in the air between us. She knew she had me cornered. My reputation was all I had. In the culinary world, reliability was everything. Harrison cleared his throat. "Perhaps we could ask some of the household staff to assist?" "They're not trained servers," Haley snapped. "I want this to be perfect." "Then maybe your expectations need to adjust to reality," I said, surprising myself with my directness. The room went silent. Harrison looked uncomfortable. Haley looked outraged. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice dangerously soft. I should have backed down, should have apologized, should have found a way to make the impossible happen, as I always did. Instead, I looked her directly in the eyes. I said, "Your expectations need to adjust to reality. I'm a chef, not a magician, and I'm certainly not a servant." "That's exactly what you are," she replied, her true nature fully revealed now. "A servant. Someone we pay to do what we want, when we want it. If that's a problem for you, there are plenty of other chefs who would kill for this opportunity." I felt something break inside me. Not my spirit, but the chains I had forged link by link over years of saying yes when I meant no, of smiling when I wanted to scream, of making myself smaller to make others feel bigger. "You're right," I said softly. "There are plenty of other chefs, so find one." Harrison's eyes widened. "Ms. Brooks, surely we can come to some arrangement." "I don't think we can, Mr. Astor." I removed my apron, slowly, deliberately, and folded it on his desk. "Everything is prepped. The instructions are detailed. Any competent chef can execute the menu." "You can't be serious," Haley sputtered. "You're walking out? Now?" "I am." I felt strangely calm, as if I were watching myself from a distance. I've spent my entire career being treated as less than human by people who confuse wealth with worth. I'm done. "You'll never work in this industry again," she threatened. "I'll make sure of it." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt only pity. "You know what the difference is between us, Haley? I can imagine being you. You can't imagine being me. And that's why you'll never be truly satisfied, no matter how many perfect dinners you host." I turned to Harrison. I'm sorry it ended this way. Your daughter is right about one thing. This dinner could have been extraordinary, but not like this. Not at this cost. As I walked to the door, Harrison called after me. Alyssa, wait. What about your mother? I'd like to help. I paused. My mother didn't raise me to sacrifice my dignity for money, Mr. Astor. Not even for her. I left them standing there. Haley fuming. Harrison looking lost. As I closed the door, I heard her begin to berate him, demanding he fix what I had broken. But for the first time in years, I wasn't responsible for fixing someone else's mess. I returned to my room, packed my bags, and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking. What had I done? Where would I go? How would I pay next month's rent? My mother's medical bills? My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, an old culinary school friend who now ran a successful catering company in Arizona. How's life with the rich and insufferable? Still surviving? 3 days ago, I had sent her a long, frustrated message about the working conditions at the Astor estate. She had responded with a job offer. Join her company as a partner, help her expand. I had laughed it off at the time. My life was in California. My mother was here. I couldn't just leave. But now, I texted back, remember that job offer? Is it still open? Her response came immediately. Hell yes. When can you start? How? About tomorrow? I replied. Serious? Yes. I can send the company jet. Just say when. The company jet. Sarah had done well for herself, catering to tech executives who valued quality and creativity over pretension. She had built something real, something honest. I glanced at my watch. It was 3:30 p.m. Guests would arrive at 7. If I left now, I could be at the airport by 5 wise. I typed, can the jet be at Monterey Regional by 5:30? Consider it done. Sending flight details now. The house was quiet as I made my way through the East Wing, suitcase in hand. Most of the staff were busy with final preparations in the garden and main house. I had almost reached the service exit when Marianne stepped out from the laundry room. Going somewhere? She asked, eyeing my suitcase. I hesitated, then nodded. I quit. To my surprise, she smiled. About damn time. She glanced over her shoulder, then pulled me into the laundry room and closed the door. What happened? I explained the confrontation with Haley and Harrison, the impossible demands, my decision to walk away. Good for you, she said when I finished. 30 years I've worked for families like this. 30 years of, yes, ma'am. And right away, sir. You know what I've got to show for it? A bad back and a tiny pension that won't cover half my expenses when I retire. I'm still not sure I'm doing the right thing, I admitted. Walking out on a job, leaving them without a chef, it feels unprofessional. Unprofessional? Marianne snorted. What's unprofessional is treating skilled workers like disposable napkins. What's unprofessional is changing the terms of employment without notice. What's unprofessional is threatening someone's reputation because they won't be your servant. She took my hands in hers. You're not running away, honey. You're running toward something better. Her words washed over me like a blessing, dissolving the last of my guilt. Thank you, I whispered, for everything. Don't thank me. Yet, she grinned suddenly, mischievously. You're not getting out of here that easily. The main gate will be monitored for deliveries, but I know another way. She led me through a maze of service corridors, down a narrow staircase, and finally to a small door partially hidden by ivy. Groundskeeper's entrance, she explained, producing a key, leads directly to the service road. My car's parked, just around the bend. You're driving me? Damn right I am. I want to make sure you actually leave this place. She opened the door, checking that the coast was clear. Besides, I haven't taken a proper break in 3 days. I'm due. 20 minutes later, we were speeding down Highway 1, the Pacific gleaming to our right. I felt lighter with each mile we put between us and the Astor estate, as if I were shedding layers of someone else's expectations. What will you do now? Marianne asked. I have a friend in Arizona. She offered me a partnership in her catering company. Arizona, huh? Hot as hell, but at least it's a dry heat. She glanced at me. What about your mother? I had been thinking about that. I'll fly back on weekends, and once I'm established, maybe I can bring her out. There. The doctors say a drier climate might help her breathing anyway. Marianne nodded approvingly. Sounds like you've got it figured out. Hardly, I laughed. I'm terrified. But also, free? Does that make sense? Perfect sense. She turned onto the airport access road. You know, they're going to be furious when they realize you're gone. Haley will have a complete meltdown. I hadn't allowed myself to imagine it until now. The moment when they discovered the kitchen empty. The panic, the scrambling, the realization that the invisible woman they had taken for granted was, in fact, essential. I left detailed instructions, I said, but couldn't suppress a small smile. Though I doubt Haley can boil water without assistance. Oh, it's going to be a disaster. Marianne sounded positively gleeful. 40 of California's most influential people, and nothing to serve them but excuses and empty glasses. I almost wish I could see it. We pulled up to the departures curb at Monterey Regional. A sleek private jet waited on the tarmac beyond. Not the opulent kind favored by celebrities, but a practical business aircraft. Sarah's company logo was visible on the tail. That's my ride, I said, suddenly nervous. This was really happening. I was really leaving. Marianne helped me with my bag. Before you go, write something for me to give them. Something that explains why you left. They deserve to know. I thought for a moment, then took out a notepad and pen from my purse. I wrote, "Thank you for reminding me who I am. I'm done being invisible. Please, don't clean the mess I left behind. Let them see it." I folded the note and handed it to Marianne. "Will you be okay? I don't want you to get in trouble for helping me." She laughed. "Honey, I've been with the Astors for 20 years. They can't function without me, and they know it. Besides, I didn't see anything. You disappeared like magic as far as I'm concerned." We embraced. This woman who had been a stranger a week ago, and now felt like family. "You take care of yourself," she whispered. "And remember, your worth isn't measured by how much you can take. It's measured by knowing when to walk away." I boarded the plane with my small suitcase and a heart full of contradictions. Fear and exhilaration, doubt and certainty, loss and possibility. As we taxied down the runway, I closed my eyes, visualizing the scene unfolding at the Astor estate. The garden would be perfect now, lights twinkling as the sun set. The first guest would be arriving, air kissing and complimenting Haley on the exquisite setting. Harrison would be checking his watch, wondering why the kitchen was so quiet. And soon, very soon, someone would discover that there was no chef, no food, no service. Just 40 crystal flutes, lined up like soldiers, waiting to be filled. As the plane lifted off, climbing into the darkening sky, I felt a surge of something unfamiliar. Not guilt or anxiety, but a fierce, quiet joy. For the first time in my adult life, I had chosen myself. I had said no. And somehow, impossibly, it felt like saying yes to everything that mattered. The Arizona sun greeted me like an old friend I'd forgotten. I missed. Harsh, honest, without pretense. So different from the gentle, deceptive California coast where beauty often masked emptiness. Sarah waited on the tarmac, her curly hair wild in the desert wind. She squealed when she saw me, enveloping me in a hug that smelled of rosemary and citrus. "I can't believe you actually did it," she said, holding me at arm's length to examine me. "You look exhausted. And magnificent." I laughed. "I feel both." "Well, get used to the magnificent part." She grabbed my suitcase. "The exhausted part we can fix with tequila and sleep in that order." Sarah's home was everything the Astor estate was not. Warm, lived in, imperfect. Cookbooks spilled from shelves. Prototypes for catering displays cluttered the dining table. A three-legged rescue dog named Butterscotch greeted us at the door. "It's not much," she said, suddenly self-conscious. "The guest room's basic, but it's perfect," I interrupted. "Seriously, Sarah, it's exactly what I need right now." She smiled, relief evident in her eyes. "Good, because you're staying here until you find your own place. No arguments." That night, over homemade enchiladas and too many margaritas, I told her everything. The impossible demands, the constant changes, the moment I finally broke. "I still can't believe I did it," I said, staring into my glass. "I've never walked out on a job before. Never. Which is exactly why it was time." Sarah refilled our glasses. "You've spent your whole life being responsible, taking care of everyone else. When was the last time someone took care of you?" I couldn't answer. Couldn't remember. That's what I thought. She raised her glass. "To boundaries. Better late than never." We clinked glasses and I felt the last of my tension dissolve. I was safe here, safe to rest, to regroup, to rebuild. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it reflexively, then froze. 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, most from unknown numbers, but 5 from Harrison Astor. Himself. "Where are you?" Please call me immediately. This is unprofessional and beneath you. I understand you were upset, but this is extreme. At least let me know you're safe. The last one gave me pause. Concern for my safety hadn't factored into my calculations. I had assumed only anger, only indignation at being inconvenienced. Ignore them, Sarah advised, seeing my expression. Whatever. Meltdown is happening at Casa Astor is not your problem anymore. I know, but no buts. She took my phone gently. Tonight is for celebrating your freedom. Tomorrow we can deal with the fallout. But the fallout found us before morning. I woke to Sarah shaking my shoulder, her face alight with excitement. Get up! You have to see this. She thrust her tablet at me. On the screen was a social media post from one of California's most followed food critics. Witnessed the most spectacular non-dinner of my career last night. 40 of CA's elite gathered at Astor Estate for what was promised to be a sensory dining experience. Instead, we got empty plates, excuses, and the distinct impression that someone finally stood up to the infamous Astor entitlement. Our empty glasses is trending as guests share their experiences. Word is, the chef walked out hours before service. If you're out there, mystery chef, I'd like to buy you a drink. Anyone who can humble Harrison Astor deserves a medal. I stared at the screen, my mouth dry. This can't be real. Oh, it's real. Sarah scrolled through more posts. And it's everywhere. People are loving it. The poor little rich girl left in the lurch. The entitled hosts exposed. It's like a modern fairy tale. I felt sick. This wasn't what I wanted. I hadn't walked out to humiliate them publicly, to become some sort of folk hero for disgruntled service workers. I had simply reached my limit. I need to call him, I said, reaching for my phone. Sarah caught my wrist. Why? To apologize? You did nothing wrong. I left them without a chef? Sarah, however justified I felt. That was unprofessional. And threatening your career? Changing the terms of your contract? Treating you like garbage? That was professional? She shook her head. No, let them stew in it. Let the world see the truth for once. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Harrison. Please call me. Not about the dinner. About your mother. My heart stopped. He's mentioned my mother. Sarah's expression darkened. That's low. Using your mom to manipulate you. What if something happened? What if your mom is fine? I called the nursing home this morning while you were sleeping. I told them I was your assistant and was checking in. She had a good night, ate breakfast, and was looking forward to her physical therapy session. Relief washed over me. You did. That? Of course I did. I know you, Alyssa. I knew you'd be worried sick. She squeezed my hand. Now get dressed. We have a meeting in an hour. A meeting? With who? Her grin was mischievous. With our new investors. Turns out everyone wants a piece of the chef who walked out on Harrison Astor. The meeting was at a sleek downtown office with views of Camelback Mountain. 3 potential investors, tech executives with money to burn, listened intently as Sarah outlined her vision for expanding Desert Bloom catering, private chef services, cooking classes, a line of specialty products. And with Alyssa on board, she concluded, we can double our capacity and reach. She brings 15 years of high-end experience and a reputation for excellence. And courage? Added one of the investors, a woman with sharp eyes and sharper wit. That Astor stunt took guts. I shifted uncomfortably. It wasn't a stunt. It was a personal decision. Whatever you call it, it's good marketing. She slid a proposal across the table. We're prepared to offer $2 million in funding. Exclusive contract with our tech campuses for 3 years. Full creative control. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. $2 million? Silicon Valley money, Sarah whispered, squeezing my knee under the table. Say yes. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Contracts to review, potential kitchen spaces to tour, calls with Sarah's existing clients who were excited about the expansion. By evening, I was drained but exhilarated. We were celebrating at Sarah's favorite rooftop bar when my phone rang with an unknown number. Hello? Is this Alyssa Brooks? A woman's voice unfamiliar. Yes, who's calling? This is Denise Wu from the Los Angeles Times. I'm writing a feature on the Astor dinner fiasco and I ended the call. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Reporter? How did they get my number? Welcome to your 15 minutes. She signaled the bartender for another round. It'll pass. Just don't engage. But the calls kept coming. Reporters, food bloggers, even a book agent asking if I'd consider a memoir. This is insane. I said after the sixth call. I'm not a story. I'm just a chef who quit a job. You're more than that, Sarah replied, her expression serious now. You're a symbol. Do you have any idea how many people fantasize about walking out on toxic jobs? How many stay because they're afraid of the consequences? You did what millions dream of doing every day. I hadn't thought of it that way. Hadn't considered that my private act of self-preservation might resonate beyond my own small world. I still need to talk to Harrison, I said. Clear the air. Make sure this doesn't escalate further. Sarah sighed. Fine, but not tonight. Tonight we celebrate the beginning of our partnership. Tomorrow you can deal with the past. I agreed, setting my phone to Do Not Disturb. For one night I would allow myself to simply be present, to enjoy the sunset painting the desert mountains gold and pink, to savor the spicy margarita and good company, to believe that maybe, just maybe, the best was yet to come. But as I gazed out at the horizon, I couldn't help wondering what was happening back at the Astor estate. Had Haley recovered from the humiliation? Was Harrison angry or perhaps secretly impressed? And Marianne, was she okay? As if summoned by my thoughts, a text message appeared on my screen. They're losing their minds here. Haley locked herself in her room. Harrison's making calls left and right. The social media storm is epic. You're my hero, chef girl. Am I? Smiled despite myself, imagining Marianne's satisfied expression as chaos reigned around her. Are you okay? I texted back. Never better. Got a raise this morning. Suddenly, I'm invaluable. Funny how that works. Perhaps some good had come from my departure after all. 3 days into my new life in Arizona, I was elbow deep in menu planning with Sarah when my phone rang. Harrison Astor. Again. This time, I answered. Mr. Astor. Alyssa. His voice was tight, controlled. Thank you for finally taking my call. I've been busy. So I've heard. Desert Bloom Catering. Impressive move. There was something in his tone I couldn't quite identify. Not anger, exactly. Something more complex. What can I do for you, Mr. Astor? I'd like to meet, in person. I laughed involuntarily. I'm in Arizona. I know. I'm at the Four Seasons in Scottsdale. I flew in this morning. My laughter died. You flew to Arizona to see me? This isn't a conversation I wanted to have over the phone. Will you meet me? 1 hour. That's all I ask. I should have said no. Should have told him that chapter of my life was closed. But curiosity, and yes, a lingering sense of obligation, got the better of me. 1 hour, I agreed. The lobby of your hotel, 3 o'clock. Sarah was furious when I told her. Are you kidding me? He flies across state lines to what? Intimidate you? Sue you? Beg you to come back? I don't know, I admitted. But I need to find out. Then I'm coming with you. No, I was firm on this. This is my mess. I'll handle it. The Four Seasons Scottsdale was desert luxury at its finest. Adobe architecture nestled among saguaros, with Pinnacle Peak providing a dramatic backdrop. I spotted Harrison immediately, sitting alone in the lobby bar, looking oddly diminished without his usual entourage. Thank you for coming, he said, standing as I approached. You flew 1,000 miles. The least I could do was drive 20 minutes. I sat across from him, declining his offer of a drink. What's this about, Mr. Astor? He studied me for a long moment. You look different. It's been 3 days. Not your appearance. Your presence. You seem happier, I suggested. Unburdened, he decided. It suits you. A server appeared with a folder, which Harrison accepted with a nod. When we were alone again, he slid it across the table to me. What's this? Open it. Inside was a check, made out to me, for an amount that made my eyes widen. What is this for? The remaining balance of your contract plus a substantial bonus. He leaned forward. I don't welch on deals, Alyssa. You were hired to create a menu, which you did excellently. The fact that circumstances prevented you from executing it doesn't negate the value of your work. I pushed the folder back toward him. I don't want your money, Mr. Astor. It's not charity, it's payment for services rendered. Services I didn't complete. Because my daughter made completion impossible. He ran a hand through his silver hair, suddenly looking every one of his 60-plus years. I owe you an apology. Haley's behavior was unacceptable. I should have intervened sooner. This was the last thing I had expected. Not demands or threats, but an apology. Why didn't you? I asked quietly. He sighed deeply. Because I've been overcompensating for 15 years. Since her mother left. Trying to be both parents. afraid of her tantrums, afraid she'd leave too. I felt a flicker of sympathy, quickly extinguished. That explains it. It doesn't excuse it. No, it doesn't. He met my gaze directly. The dinner was a disaster, by the way. Absolute chaos. We tried to salvage it with delivery from a local restaurant, but by then it was too late. The damage was done. I'm sorry for the disruption, I said, surprised to find I meant it. But not for leaving. Nor should you be. He smiled faintly. Your note, the one you left with Marianne, it was quite something. Let them see it. We did see it. All of us. The empty kitchen. The precise instructions no one could follow. The void left by someone we had taken for granted. I didn't know what to say to that. The media coverage has been illuminating, he continued. Apparently, I've become the poster child for entitled employers. Haley is devastated, of course. She blames me for not fixing it. She blames you for being unprofessional. She blames everyone but herself. And what do you think? I asked. He considered this carefully. I think you taught us all a valuable lesson about respect. Expensive, but valuable. I almost laughed at the understatement. Well, lesson learned, I hope. Now, if that's all, it's not. He leaned forward. I'd like to offer you a job. Now I did laugh. You can't be serious. Perfectly serious, not as a personal chef. As the executive chef of Astor Vineyard's new farm-to-table restaurant. Complete creative control. Name your salary. Why would you offer me that after what happened? Because you're the best chef I've worked with in 20 years. Because you have integrity and vision. And because, he hesitated, I owe it to your mother. My heart skipped. What does my mother have to do with this? Elizabeth Brooks saved my company when everyone else had written it off. Without her restructuring plan, there would be no Astor Vineyards today. No fortune, no estate, nothing. He looked down at his hands. I always meant to thank her properly, to offer her a partnership or at least a permanent position. But by the time the company was stable again, she had moved on. And I let it go, let her go. I struggled to process this. My mother had never spoken much about her consulting work, had always treated it as just a job. But to hear Harrison tell it, she had been instrumental in creating his empire. She never mentioned it, I said. Never took credit. That sounds like Elizabeth. His smile was tinged with something like regret. Brilliant, but humble. Fierce, but kind. Much like her daughter. The compliment caught me off guard. Mr. Astor. Harrison, please. Harrison. I appreciate the offer, but I've just committed to a partnership here. I'm not looking to relocate again. He nodded, unsurprised. I thought you might say that. In that case, I have an alternative proposal. He produced another folder. Astor Vineyards would like to be Desert Bloom Catering's first major investor. $3 million, no strings attached, except first rights to your services for our California events, when and if you're available. I stared at him, speechless. It's not charity, he said again, reading my expression. It's good business. And perhaps in some small way, it begins to repay the debt I owe your family. I'll need to discuss this with Sarah. Of course. He stood, signaling the end of our meeting. Take your time. The offer stands regardless of your decision about the check. He gestured to the first folder, still on the table between us. As we walked toward the exit, he paused. One more thing. Haley would like to speak with you. I stopped short. Absolutely not. She's here, in Scottsdale. He held up a hand as I began to protest. I'm not asking you to meet her. I'm simply letting you know that she followed me here, against my wishes. She's struggling with what happened. That's not my problem. No, it's mine. It always has been. He looked at me with tired eyes. But if she approaches you, I hope you'll remember that beneath all that entitlement is a very insecure young woman who never learned how to be a decent human being. That failure is on me, not her. I felt a confusing mix of emotions, lingering anger at Haley, unexpected sympathy for Harrison, and a strange sense that a circle was closing, connecting my mother's past to my present. If she approaches me respectfully, I'll listen, I conceded. That's all I can promise. He nodded, seeming relieved. That's more than enough. Thank you, Alyssa, for everything. As I watched him walk away, I wondered what my mother would make of all this. Her former client flying across states to apologize to her daughter. Would she be proud of me for walking away? For standing my ground? Or would she see it as a reckless act of self-sabotage? I pulled out my phone and called the nursing home. It was time to tell her everything. Mom, you're not going to believe this. I sat by my mother's bed in the Arizona nursing home, still processing the events of the past week. Harrison Astor wants to invest in my new business. My mother's eyes, still sharp despite her frail body, widened slightly. Harrison? You've met him? More than met him. I worked for him. Or rather, for his daughter. I took her hand, noting how the desert air had already improved her color. Moving her to Arizona had been easier than expected. Harrison's private medical transport had seen to that. Another gesture I hadn't asked for, but couldn't refuse. Tell me everything, she said, sitting up straighter against her pillows. So I did. The Astor estate, Haley's impossible demands, my breaking point, the escape, the aftermath. By the time I finished, my mother was smiling. A rare, full smile that took years off her face. You walked out on a billionaire's dinner party, she said, shaking her head in wonder. My cautious, responsible daughter. You're not disappointed? Disappointed? She squeezed my hand. Alyssa, I've spent 15 years watching you work yourself to exhaustion for people who didn't deserve your talent. I've spent 15 years wishing you'd value yourself as much as you value your work. Her eyes filled with unexpected tears. I'm proud of you, finally putting yourself first. Her approval washed over me like a benediction, dissolving doubts I hadn't realized I still carried. Harrison mentioned you, I said carefully. Said you saved his company 20 years ago. My mother's expression softened with memory. The vineyard was his dream, but he'd overextended. Bad investments. The banks were circling. I restructured his debt, renegotiated contracts, found new distribution channels. She shrugged. Just business. He called it brilliant. Said he owes his fortune to you. She waved this away. He did the work. I just showed him the path. Why didn't you ever tell me? She was quiet for a moment. Because it wasn't important. It was just another job. A job that built an empire. A job that took me away from you too often. Her gaze turned inward. After your father left, I threw myself into work. Thought if I could just make enough money, create enough security, everything would be fine. But I missed so much. She looked at me with sudden intensity. That's why I'm proud of you for walking away. For recognizing what took me too long to learn. That no job is worth sacrificing your dignity or happiness. I blinked back tears. I wish I'd done it sooner. You did it exactly when you were ready, she smiled. Now, tell me about this partnership with Sarah and Harrison's offer. We discussed the pros and cons of accepting his investment, the opportunity it represented, the strings that might be attached, visible or not. Trust your instincts, my mother advised. But remember, taking someone's money doesn't mean giving them your power. The terms matter. The relationship matters. As I was leaving, she called me back. There's one more thing you should know about Harrison. She hesitated. We were more than business associates. For a brief time, I stared at her, connecting dots I hadn't seen before. You and Harrison. It wasn't serious. His marriage was already failing. I was divorced. Two lonely people working late nights. She shrugged, but I could see the memory still held meaning for her. When the project ended, so did we. Different worlds, different priorities. Does he know that I know? I never told him. It wasn't relevant to our professional relationship. She smiled wryly. But maybe it explains why he flew 1,000 miles to make things right with you. This new information shifted my understanding of Harrison's interest in my career, his remorse, his generosity. Not just guilt over his daughter's behavior, not just respect for my mother's professional contributions, but something more personal, more complicated. Outside the nursing home, I found an unexpected visitor. Waiting by my car, Haley Astor, looking smaller somehow in simple jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. How did you find me? I asked, immediately on guard. Dad told me you'd moved your mother here. She shifted uncomfortably. I've been waiting for hours. I wasn't sure you'd come today. What do you want, Haley? She took a deep breath. To apologize. For everything. Leaned against my car, arms crossed. I'm listening. I was horrible to you. Entitled, demanding, disrespectful. The words seemed to cause her physical pain. I've never had to face consequences before. Never had someone just walk away. There's always a first time. The dinner was a disaster, she continued. Everyone knew it was my fault, that I'd driven away the chef. The hashtag is still trending. She looked down at her hands. I've never been so humiliated. That wasn't my intention, I said honestly. I just couldn't do it anymore. I know. And that's what made it worse. Knowing you weren't trying to hurt me. You were just refusing to let me hurt you. She glanced up, her eyes red-rimmed. Dad made me see a therapist. 3 sessions already. She says I have narcissistic tendencies from growing up with too much privilege and not enough boundaries. I bit back a smile at the understatement. Sounds about right. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said. I just wanted you to know that I get it now. What I did. Who I've been. She turned to go, then paused. And I wanted to give you this. She handed me a small box. Inside was a single crystal champagne flute, identical to the ones I had polished for her ill-fated dinner party. To remind you, she said quietly, every time you doubt yourself, remember that you had the courage to walk away from 40 empty glasses and 1 very empty person. She smiled, a real smile without artifice. And maybe someday, when I've done the work, you'll let me fill that glass properly, as an equal, not an employer. I was speechless. Of all the scenarios I had imagined for this inevitable confrontation, genuine remorse had never figured into my calculations. I appreciate that, Haley, I said finally. It can't have been easy to come here. Easier than living with myself if I hadn't? She shrugged. Anyway, Dad's waiting. We're flying back tonight. Good luck with everything. You too, Chef. She caught herself. Alyssa, good luck with your new venture. You deserve it. I watched her walk away, marveling at how people could surprise you just when you thought you had them figured out. First Harrison, now Haley. The Astor family was proving more complex than I had given them credit for. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Meeting set with legal team tomorrow to review Astor investment offer. You in? I thought about my mother's advice, about Harrison's complicated connection to our family, about Haley's unexpected growth. I'm in, I replied, but with conditions. It's time we set some boundaries. As I drove back to Sarah's house, the crystal flute carefully secured in its box, I felt an unfamiliar sensation, the lightness of closure, of a chapter ending well. Not with bitterness or regret, but with understanding and possibility. Sometimes walking away wasn't an ending at all. Sometimes it was the first step towards something better. 6 months can change everything. Desert Bloom Catering became Desert Table Group, a family of businesses including our original catering service, a cooking school for at-risk youth, a line of gourmet meal kits, and a small but exquisite farm-to-table cafe. The Astor investment, carefully negotiated with clear boundaries and expectations, had fueled our expansion beyond our wildest projections. You're in Forbes, Sarah announced, bursting into my office with a glossy magazine. The chef who said no, how Alyssa Brooks walked out on a billionaire and built her own empire. She tossed it onto my desk. Not bad for 6 months. Work. I smiled at her excitement but didn't reach for the magazine. You know I hate that narrative, like I'm some kind of rebel hero. But you are. She perched on the edge of my desk. The story inspires people, Alyssa. Every interview request we get, every investor who calls, they all mention it. They mention it because it went viral, not because what I did was special. It was special because it was honest, because you showed everyone what dignity looks like. She squeezed my shoulder. Now come on. The students are waiting for you. Our cooking school operated out of a converted warehouse in a neglected part of Phoenix. 3 afternoons a week, 20 teenagers, most from foster care or low-income households, learned culinary skills, nutrition, business basics, and most importantly, their own worth. Today they were preparing for their first public event, a community dinner for 200 people, with proceeds funding scholarships for graduates who wanted to pursue culinary careers. They worked with focused intensity. These kids who had been told all their lives they wouldn't amount to much. Chef Brooks, Miguel called from the pastry station. Come taste this. I added cardamom like you suggested. I sampled his creation, a simple shortbread with complex spicing, and nodded approvingly. Perfect balance. Not too much, just enough to make people wonder what that special something is. He beamed with pride. 6 months ago, he'd been on probation for shoplifting, silent and suspicious. Now he was our star pastry student, already fielding apprenticeship offers. Across the kitchen, Tasha was instructing a younger student on knife skills, the same techniques I'd shown her weeks earlier. No, hold it like this. See? You have more control. You're less likely to slip. I moved among them, tasting, advising, encouraging. This was the work that fed my soul. Not the magazine features or investment meetings or even the high-end catering that still paid our bills. This kitchen full of second chances and growing confidence. As the students cleaned up, my phone rang with a familiar number. Harrison, I answered. How are you? Thriving, thanks to your remarkable catering at our harvest festival. His voice was warm, the formality of our early interactions long dissolved. The feedback has been extraordinary. Haley did an excellent job coordinating with your team. Haley had indeed surprised everyone. After intensive therapy and a self-imposed break from social media, she had returned to Astor Vineyards with genuine humility and a determination to learn the business from the ground up. When she'd asked to be our primary contact for Astor events, I'd been skeptical, but she had proven herself reliable, respectful, and surprisingly insightful. She's come a long way, I agreed. She has you to thank for that. We both do. There was a pause. I spoke with Elizabeth yesterday. My mother and Harrison had reconnected cautiously over these past months. Nothing romantic, those days were long past for both of them, but a friendship built on shared history and mutual respect. She mentioned you're considering expanding to California. We're exploring options, I said carefully. The right opportunity hasn't presented itself yet. What if I told you I have a property in Sonoma, an old stone building that used to be the vineyard's first winery? It would make an extraordinary restaurant space. I smiled to myself. Harrison never could resist solving problems. I'd say it sounds intriguing, but any discussion would need to include Sarah. And our board. Of course, he chuckled. Just planting seeds, Alyssa. Just planting seeds. After we disconnected, I lingered in the now quiet kitchen. 6 months ago, I'd been desperate for work, accepting humiliation as the price of survival. Now I was fielding expansion offers, managing a growing business, mentoring the next generation, all because I'd finally said no. My phone buzzed again. A text from Marianne, who had become an unexpected friend and frequent visitor since relocating to Arizona herself. She now managed operations for our cooking school, bringing decades of experience and unflappable calm to our sometimes chaotic environment. Don't forget, dinner at my place tonight. Your mother's already here. Bring wine. I texted back a quick confirmation and gathered my things. As I locked up, Miguel appeared at my side. Chef Brooks, can I ask you something? Of course. He hesitated, uncharacteristically nervous. How did you know? That you were good enough to make it on your own? The question caught me off guard with its directness, its vulnerability. I didn't, I admitted. I just knew I couldn't keep living on other people's terms. But weren't you scared? Terrified. I smiled at the memory. But sometimes the scariest step is the one that sets you free. He nodded slowly, absorbing this. I got the apprenticeship offer, the one in Chicago. Miguel, that's wonderful. My foster parents think I should stay here, where it's safe, where they can keep an eye on me. He looked down. But I want to go. I want to see what I can do. I recognized his dilemma with painful clarity, the pull between safety and possibility, between others' expectations and personal growth. What does your gut tell you? That I'm ready. His voice strengthened with certainty. That it's time. Then trust that. I put a hand on his shoulder. The people who truly care about you will support your journey, even if they're afraid for you. And you're never really alone. You carry everything you've learned with you. His smile was worth every difficult moment of the past year. Thanks, Chef. As I drove to Marianne's for dinner, I thought about Miguel, about to take his own leap of faith, about my mother, finding unexpected friendship in her final chapter, about Haley, reconstructing herself with painful honesty, about Sarah, whose unwavering belief had created space for my reinvention, and about those 40 empty glasses lined up like crystal soldiers, waiting to be filled. I had walked away thinking it was an ending, but it had been a beginning, not just for me, but for everyone whose lives had intersected with mine in that moment of truth. The desert sunset painted the sky in impossible colors as I pulled into Marianne's driveway. Through the window, I could see them gathered around her table. My mother, Sarah, Marianne herself, family found rather than born to, connections forged through respect and choice rather than obligation. I carried the wine and the crystal flute Haley had given me, now a tradition for special occasions. Tonight we would fill it to celebrate our first 6 months, to toast the students' upcoming dinner, to mark another milestone in our shared journey. For years, I thought being useful was the same as being valued, I'd told a reporter recently. But now I know, real worth comes when you stop serving those who only want to be fed and start nourishing those who truly see you. As I joined my chosen family at the table, I knew with absolute certainty that I had found my place at last, not as someone's chef, girl, but as myself. Imperfect, still learning, but finally, irrevocably free. To empty glasses, Marianne proposed, raising her drink with a knowing smile. And to filling them on our own terms, I completed, clinking my crystal flute against hers. Sometimes the most luxurious thing you can serve is your own freedom.